So, welcome to another episode of Growing Tech Fast. This is the condensed podcast in which conversations about growing SaaS startups are had with those who have grown them. Today, we've got a real treat in store. We're joined of Kartier of Momnt. Kartier, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. Really excited.
Thanks so much for coming. As you say, it's it's a great pleasure of ours to have you on. Um, Cartier, you are the first openly trans Black executive in the fintech arena, and it's a real pleasure to have you on to give you this kind of visibility and learn more about your journey.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it really has been a journey. Um, so I am the Vice President of Operations at Moment, and we are a now 3-year-old startup, and so we're still pretty young. But I kind of want to dive into like what we do. Moment is an embedded lending platform that allows merchants to easily transact with their customers. We make financing easy for everybody by being a complete one-stop shop. So once that consumer gets that loan, we are serviced from beginning to end. So the merchant, let's say, for example, if you were a small mom and pop shop or a larger entity, if you partner with us, you don't have to go about having a back office that deals in financing and the bureaucracy and so on and so forth. We handle all of that for you. And so it makes everything very easy and very seamless for the merchant and the customer, which obviously means more profits for the merchants because they are able to offer those lending options. So the more you give customers an opportunity to have financial options to do their jobs, the more yeses you get. So
Okay, okay. Well, that sounds like a really interesting technology. Be, what is your what's your ideal customer, Cartier? What kind is it? Is it anyone, or do you target startups that maybe don't have that financial back staff? What would your ideal customer be?
it's on the well, so let's talk about the merchant end. So on the merchant end, it's we deal with all different types of merchants. Currently, we're in two different verticals. We got our start in home improvement, and we've also since expanded into elective medical. And so we have large merchants that have partnered with us, and all of their subsidiaries use our platform. And we also have, smaller entities that are, startups themselves, or
Hmm.
just smaller merchants. So we are able to fit in with any sort of business model, and we're looking to expand into all different types of verticals from here. So the sky is the limit. We are
Yeah.
currently doing really, really well. We're doing better than any of us expected to at this stage of our business. And as we know, the global economy is a little bit shaky right now. And of course, we've had to grow and scale through a recession.
Hmm.
And being able to meet those challenges as a baby startup, and not just meet those, but exceed the expectations of our banking partners, of our investors, and grow through those big hurdles. And so all of the key indicators of our success, they're there. And so we're really, really, really excited.
Uh, Absolutely. Well, it sounds like it's been such a journey and such a ride. As you say, being founded 3 years ago in the middle or at the beginning of a global pandemic
Yeah.
presents so many challenges. But to get
Mhm.
through that and come out on the other side, and I've been having doing some research and looking at you, already scaled from that very small team with an idea into a 130 odd people company is incredible.
Yeah.
Um, and that just shows the momentum that Moment has on the market and the problem
Mhm.
that it is addressing. So, at what point did you join Cartier?
So it's almost been 2 years. So coming right up actually in July. So there's a long backstory. Well, not a long one, but it's a pretty interesting backstory of how I arrived at this company. Some of the founders actually started, or actually all three of the founders met each other at a company called Green Sky. So you may have
Hmm.
heard of Green Sky. It was recently brought on by Goldman and Sachs and things like that. And so those people, as well as myself, we all came from that background. So like I was employee number 40 at Green Sky. And so we all had opportunities, as fate would have it, to kind of work together. And we were a part of Green Sky's success. So we continued different ventures, and that was, I want to say, maybe 7, 8 years ago.
Hmm.
We continued to move into different ventures. Of course, the founders, eventually ended up founding this startup. This is now my fourth, and Lena, my COO and co-founder, she said, "You know what? I think it's time for us to really start to put our money where our mouth is with operations and expand it." And they said, "Well, do you have someone in mind?" And she called me up. I was working with another startup in Oregon, and Lena, when she calls and says, "Hey, girl, come on," I got up and I moved across country and I came over. And
Wow.
it has literally been the best decision that I have ever made. And, I'm sure we'll get into the biggest thing that I love about Moment, which is our company culture. It None of us have ever seen anything like it.
Absolutely. Well, that was kind of going to be my next point. It's quite a statement for a startup let's be honest, an industry dominated by white heterosexual males, to put yourself, openly trans, black executive into, which is arguably the kind of the working parts, one of the most important influential roles of the company. A statement to make. Yeah, explain to me more about that.
It is quite a statement, I guess, especially on the outside looking in. Moment is somewhat of a bubble, right? It's a bubble in a world where currently there's a lot of candidly a lot of conversation that's not so has historically not been so positive towards members of the LGBTQIA plus community, and specifically people who are trans and non-binary. The
Mm,
conversation, for the last, I don't know how many years, has been, and the narratives have been, very difficult. But as far as Moment is concerned, it doesn't raise an eyebrow at all. That like
yeah.
no, literally no one cares, right? Like that I'm trans, and that in and of
And why should
itself
they? Why
is a
should they?
and why should they, right? But
Yeah.
that in and of itself, especially in the finance world, like you said, it is very dominated by it's the executives look one way and have always looked one way. But there was an intention in the founding of Moment to make sure that we create a culture, like period, that at the end of the day, whoever you are, whatever your background is, there we respect what you're bringing to the table. We respect the person. We respect you as a human being, and we are always fighting to give everybody agency. So in a culture like that, where we're everyone, it doesn't matter what what your role is, everyone is super, super, we're almost religiously dedicated to making sure that we're all respecting each other and that we are lifting voices when they need to be heard. So at the end of the day, when they said, "Hey, we like," I'll share a story. Actually, when Lena gave me that call and she said, "Hey, I want you to interview for this," my COO, who I love, she's amazing. She went to everybody that was on staff at the time, and she said, "Hey, I have someone that I think is going to be fantastic for this role." this person is an openly trans woman. Is that a problem for them? And they almost laughed at her.
Yeah, yeah,
They're like, girl,
yeah,
no, that's not a problem. That's great.
yeah, of
And
course.
that's the environment that I came into, and that's the environment that we've continued to foster. But as I was saying earlier, I do realize that this is kind of a blessed oasis. The larger issue is that for the vast majority of people such as myself, it's hard to even get a job. It's hard to get people that are hiring managers to even, take us seriously. And the
Yeah,
conversation verbally doesn't happen. But I myself have been refused employment before. And what it came down to was my identity because that,
wow.
made it. And I know what that feels like. And I definitely understand that there's tons of people like myself that are not at a moment that are just not given the chance because of who they are. And that's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
It's not well it's not just ridiculous, well it's illegal firstly. um
Right.
so let's call it what it is. But
Mhm.
it's incredible because not only is it um awf it's horrendous to the individual and what you must be experiencing, and I cannot imagine to even consider how you must feel, and you know for you to be in a position where you can make positive change and impact and show the world of not just fintech, but tech and SaaS wider, um, what you bring to the table. Um, the other part of this is not only getting sort of into these companies, but also the impact and the different viewpoints that you can bring as well. Your lived experience is so much is probably the opposite of what most of the executives in the space are, and are much more representative of a wider generation. So,
Right.
what do you think? Obviously, that's at the core of Moment's culture. Explain to me about that. What do you think that different lived experience and viewpoints in culture can bring to a startup going to market?
Right. So you're gonna laugh at me, but everybody who knows me knows that I'm a huge fan of X-Men. I have like a couple of X-Men tattoos.
Okay.
You're speaking about like generational differences. I'm what they would call an elder millennial. I'm about to be 36. And so I come from a generation that grew up seeing groups of superheroes and subconsciously intaking the idea that everyone on this team of superheroes is vastly different. And them being bad, like Storm and Wolverine, you wouldn't see them out in public and think that they would have anything to do with each other. Their powers are totally different, their backgrounds are totally different. But it didn't occur to anyone, I think, in my in my age bracket that that would be a problem. In fact, we've been fed the positive narrative that the more diverse the team is, the wider array of superpowers we all can bring to the table to defeat the bad guy, right? That's
I love
so
that. I
that
love that. I
you
love
know
that. The
so
X-Men of Moment.
Fantastic Four, yeah, like Fantastic Four, you can name it. It did it. No one questions those things. No one. Doesn't matter what your background is. So I say that to say we all have seen what that looks like. We've seen
Mm,
diversity not just stop at hiring, right? Because I think when we talk about the diversity and inclusion, a lot of times we think of it in terms of a metric. We meaning the corporate world at large, and
hmm
we think, okay, if we can get X amount of people of this color or X amount of women, then that's a good thing. Of course, that's a big part of the conversation is that you want to make sure that we're giving equal opportunity to
hmm
everyone, that people are being, allowed into the door based on their merit, right? And not being held away because of their identity. So that's a big part of it. But we at Moment, we realize, and I think it's just, like I said, built into how we have created our high performing teams. We realize that everybody's going to come to us with wide varieties of different ways of looking at a problem. And that's not
Mm,
something that we should be shy about. For instance, I'll take my own outlook. I can't speak for all trans people, obviously, but
sure.
I think that goes without saying. But myself and the friends that I have that are trans and non-binary, we have had to check the status quo just, to live. The fact that I am living and breathing and have walked outside of my house is a check
Yeah.
to the status quo. And so we ask ourselves, well, how does that translate to business? We see how that translates to activism and fighting for rights. But
Hmm.
what does that look like in a corporate setting? Well, what it looks like in a corporate setting is when I have processes lined up in front of me, it's already wired in my brain to say, okay, how can we make this better? How
Hmm.
can we make sure that our customers' voice is being heard when we, look at policies and processes and procedures? That's already innate in me, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that if I could speak to other people who have the opportunity to, hire trans, non-binary, LGBTQIA people, let's change the narrative of looking at these people as they're strange and they it's
Mm,
hard to have a conversation. I'm scared to have a conversation with them for because I don't want to be canceled. Let's change that narrative and start looking at it like, oh, this is a person who by nature has to think outside of the box. I wonder how that could positively impact us. you know?
yeah. Do you know, you just made a point that I actually hadn't even considered. And maybe it's because I've looked at this. I've come at this sort of come at this issue with a negative lens on as to, well, why the hell aren't there more people like Cartier in the tech world? And it's what you just said there about it not being necessarily the preconceived notions of the hiring manager, but their actual that you think that they might actually be afraid to say the wrong thing or get cancelled. Do you think that
Absolutely.
is holding people back?
I think so. I think so. I think to a lesser degree, there's that, that outright, oh, I just have a fear of hiring this type of person. I think, at this point in 2023, that's definitely still there.
Hmm.
But it's even larger. We have to break down what is that phobia about. And so, in my experience, a lot of times people just, it doesn't even have to be at work. A lot of times people have this innate fear that if I say the wrong thing, if I use the wrong pronoun, if I, do, and there's this litany of things, there's this innate fear that the world is going to come apart, they're going to be canceled, they're going to be fired, they're going to all of these things. And that's a valid concern. I'm not here to say that that's not a valid concern, but there's a
Hmm.
better approach than avoiding the person, right? Than
Yeah.
making sure
Yeah.
those that's not an answer, right?
No, it
The
can't be an
answer
answer. It can't be.
no. The answer is to create a space that fosters real conversation with that human being and to lead with saying, hey, there's a possibility that I could make a mistake. I need you to understand my heart and I need you to understand my intention. And
Yeah.
once I have that conversation with everybody, like with
Yeah.
people that work for me, regardless of your background, your first day, I'm saying, hey, I just want you to know there's the narrative of what you may interpret like and there's a possibility that you could see something that I'm saying as mean or just cutthroat. Understand my heart and understand that my intention is to support you and make sure you're good. And from that space,
Yeah.
we can talk through anything, right? All
Yeah.
trans non-binary people are asking for is that same benefit of the doubt. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That's how we tell. I mean, he even in, my job day to day, the way that we learn and grow is by making mistakes and making mistakes is okay as long as you're willing to learn from them and take action on next step.
Mhm.
So I think that's
Absolutely.
a yeah, yeah. You can't just avoid the conversation. We can't just avoid growth
Mhm.
at all. Growing is making mistakes, learning about it, and moving forward. Cartier, it's been absolutely fascinating. What I'd love to do as well, I mean,
Mhm.
you know, as we said, there's a huge disparity, but there's a huge lack of representation in the fintech, not
Absolutely.
just the fintech world, in the tech world as a whole. What advice would you give, I suppose, to both? Firstly, to hiring managers, and secondly, to people um,
Mhm.
who are who are trans or a minority looking to get into the space.
Right. So let's start with the people that are trying to, break into tech. I'm a diehard operator. Like I've been operating since, like 23. And so and have had leadership skills. I have had to climb every single rung
Hmm.
of the operations ladder. And one of the things that I would say as an operator is get in where you fit in. Like if I started on the phones, right? So I
Mm,
started, in service, and the unique, awesome thing about doing it that way and kind of, getting in at an entry level point in whatever aspect of tech you want to get in. But jumping in at that entry level point, paying your dues and, going through the stages, it has made me a great in my mind a great VP
yeah.
because I understand the processes from beginning to end because I've lived through every last one of them. I've had to demonstrate mastery at every single turn. There's that way, or there's the way of you get in and you jump in kind of ahead of the curve. I tend to have a little bit more of an advantage over somebody that, that just, jumps in at like an executive level or jumps in at a managerial level because I've had to
Mm,
be in the trenches.
yeah.
I know what that's like. I know what that process should look like. I know what that call should look like. So that's one aspect. Don't be afraid to jump in at the beginning. And then the other aspect is internally understand what it is that you want out of your career and in the larger way out of your life. How do
Hmm.
you envision yourself in the next 5 years? And then ask yourself, does this business, whichever business it is, do you really see that being a critical part of getting you to that 5, 10 year vision? If that answer is yes, then you know you're in the right place.
Okay. Brilliant. And then a word for the hiring managers.
Yeah, we can't forget the hiring managers. So it's not easy, right? I think we would go back to what I said earlier. Don't be afraid to have the conversation. One of the things that I tell emerging leaders and leaders that are just starting out is I want you to have a conversation in the interview, right? There's two ways that you can approach the interview. I call it one, the HR way, right? Which is fantastic. And it's certain bullet points that you've got to hit, right? For various reasons, compliance. And then also, there are certain things that you just have to ask to make sure people understand the role and can fit in the role. But then there's also the person to person conversational way. I like to have people somewhere in the middle. Don't be afraid to open your heart and open your mind to hearing that person's perspective and what they have been through that have led them to this point. And also the same for you. Be willing to share that because at the end of the
Mm,
day, people need to, or people are going to follow a human being. They're
yeah.
going to follow somebody that they know that sees them. Everyone wants to be seen. Like it's great that you understand the value of my work, but do you really see what I am bringing
Mm,
forth, right?
yeah.
And so if we have that conversation and that understanding, the first time I'm meeting you, then that sets the stage for a great working relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Carter, that's fantastic. It's been so, I wish that we could just continue talking about this. It's a really important topic that is not getting the airwaves it should, and hopefully, this is
Mm.
a movement now where
Yeah.
um, we see more of people from minority backgrounds and also from the LGBTQ plus community um, being involved in the tech space. I love the idea of X-Men and everyone bringing their own superpowers.
Yes,
And
I
I,
literally
f-
haven't like that's my Professor X too. I'm
I
serious. Like it's a problem.
I love it. I think it's a fantastic. It sounds like X-Men was way ahead of its time. Never mind
Yeah.
us being behind our time. But look,
Absolutely.
thanks so much for joining us. I know you're exceptionally busy, but Cartier, first and only openly trans Black executive in the fintech space. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, thanks for listening to Growing Tech Fast.